Okay, let's get started off. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us. Like I said, we have a super exciting session for you, empowering frontline workers with AI. My name is Vishal, and I have Natalie and Irina co-presenting with me today, and we're super excited to bring this content to you. A friendly reminder, you can check out the Frontline Fridays blog by clicking on the link on your screen. You can also catch up on all of the sessions on demand by visiting aka.ms/Frontline Fridays. Let me quickly give you a recap of what exactly Frontline Fridays is and what our mission is. We want to help you build a smarter, more connected frontline workforce with the Microsoft suite. And we focus on three things. The first is providing clarity. So we want you to understand the entire suite of tools Microsoft has to offer for frontline workers. Everything ranging from identity and devices to the power of AI, which we're going to cover today. The second is defining use cases. So we want to address common customer challenges and questions and how to be able to solve them. And finally, share resources, very practical resources that help you launch, adopt, scale, and support your employees as they help support your business and your customers. So we've had 5 sessions prior to this from the end of May leading up to the session today. It covered a gamut of topics from identity, device management, and deployment to change management, which is super critical and important, I'm sure, for all of you, to corporate, operational, and local collaboration and communication, to being able to optimize operational processes like shift tasks and scheduling, schedule management, and finally, the home experience. Everything brought into one shell for your frontline workers so that they can access apps, resources, learning material, pay stubs, and everything from 1P and 3P solutions. Leading up to our session today on the 8th of August, AI powered automation and information retrieval decision making for your frontline workforce. So a couple of friendly reminders during the presentation, we will mute your microphone for the first part of the call. Please feel free to ask your questions throughout the session in chat or Q&A. Common questions will get addressed out loud at the end of the call. After the presentation, we'll let you raise your hands and go unmute and turn your camera on so that you can ask us questions live, and we'd be more than happy to address it live for you. In terms of agenda, we want to keep it simple. These are the 5 things that are most important to all of our customers. We want to give you an introduction to AI and how AI can be super useful to your frontline workers. We'll talk about what the different ways in bringing AI to your frontline workers are, including Copilot Chat and agents. We'll show you how you can do this by building your own agents using agents off the shelf and the different implementation paths available to you. Very important topic, governed, secure, and responsible AI, bringing all of that to your frontline workers, and finally opening the floor up for Q&A. So resetting context, if you've not tuned into some of our previous sessions of Frontline Fridays, which I would highly recommend you do on demand now, but we are taking this customer as a use case example, Wood Grow Grocery. They have about 1,500 stores, 30,000 store employees, and 10,000 store support. They use a gamut of Microsoft solutions already, from collaboration, communication, identity devices, but they also have Workday for human resources, UKG for workforce management, ADP for payroll, SAP for inventory, and ServiceNow for IT tickets and help desk. And these are some of their current challenges. So the first one is corporate comms are mostly emailed to a shared mailbox for store managers and are expected to be relayed to the team by printing, communicating in huddles and other methods. Non-managers don't get any direct comms today. Most of the managers and their store employees use WhatsApp, which is not at all a compliant means for work and business. So we taught you in session 3 of Frontline Fridays how you can achieve corp comms, operational comms, and local comms using the Microsoft suite. And today we'll teach you how AI can take it to the next level. The second is operations, some key processes having tooling in separate systems like SAP and ServiceNow. Other processes are very manual, they're on pen and paper or on whiteboards. Store audits are performed just once a quarter, and most documentation is in binder somewhere or in PDFs. And if you're lucky, sometimes on the SharePoint site. So, through the sessions on Frontline Fridays, we taught you how Teams is backed by a SharePoint site, and you can always have your content be organized and easily accessible there. But today, with AI and everything that's possible, we're going to show you how you can get quick answers to questions, even without going and parsing through several documents and being able to read through 8 or 10 page documents. Next is scheduling and payslips. Vast majority within Woodgrove uses UKG for that. Mailed or emailed to personal accounts, since email accounts are not available, identities are not available. The 200 stores have been recently acquired and they do scheduling using pen and paper. So for this, in session 4 of Frontline Fridays, we taught you how shifts and tasks are extremely powerful that Microsoft offers off the shelf. And in session 5, we taught you how you can also bring in all of this into a single shell in your home experience. So even if you're using UKG for scheduling and payslips, you can bring it into the home experience in the Teams app that's mobile first. And today, again, AI takes it a notch up, and we'll show you some of the ways how it can do it. Training, some stuff in Workday, some stuff in personal manuals, hard copies. Training is done, shared PCs in break rooms. All of this can be totally revolutionized using the Microsoft suite, and AI is only going to make it better. Finally, identity and devices. So today they use a lot of shared Zebra devices and tablets in each store. Personal devices are not officially sanctioned, but users end up using their personal devices and WhatsApp and wireless traditional phones are used in some stores within Woodgrove Grocery. And in session 1 of Frontline Fridays, we taught you how you can have a separate identity for each user. You can have devices, you can have a combination of app policy, device management, two-factor authentication, and all of the rigorous security standards Microsoft has to offer, so that even if customers and users are bringing in their own devices, it's done in a very secure and compliant way before you even get to start using the entire M365 suite and the power of AI today. So these are some of the challenges, and through the series, we have taught you how you can be able to solve for some of those challenges that Woodgrove has. Woodgrove is a retail operation, but a lot of the challenges and scenarios that we're going to outline today are applicable to whether you're a retail organization or manufacturing, travel, transport, hospitality, healthcare, all of the different frontline industries that exist. We want to be able to solve for all of those solutions, and Woodgrove is just one example. So, what are some of the strategic business goals that Woodgrove has all up? It is to reduce noise and not create confusion within their operations, be able to simplify processes, reduced security risk, non governance, non compliance, not have users calling their IT help desk every other hour, more value from their existing device installments, being able to safely use their own devices in a secure, governed, compliant way, and a consistent user experience. Now, like I said, through the course of Frontline Fridays, we've already showed you how a lot of this can be solved with the M365 suite. And as we present the different AI options and solutions available to your customers, when we wrap up this presentation, we'll show you exactly how all of those cater to Woodgrove's strategic business goals. Now, if I had to simply put how AI can help your frontline operations and frontline workers, I'd call out these 3 bullets. First is delivering quick answers from information that may exist in SharePoint, in OneDrive. If you have 3P databases, 3P content tools, all of it can be brought together and can be simplified in terms of answering questions with the power of AI without going through, like I said, 10-page documents or physical binders full of documents. Super powerful so that your frontline workers can focus on solving for end customer needs and requirements and can optimize for efficiency in their day-to-day work. The second is simplifying a lot of this complex documentation. If you have a 10-page SOP, or if you have a 20-page policy document, or if you have instruction manuals that these days I hear are hundreds or thousands of pages for some of the POS devices that are out there. What if you can give simple answers to questions that are pinpoint focused to solving the frontline workers' problems? And then finally, streamline processes, things like meeting note taking, drafting incident reports, creating visual displays and other content to share out to drive promotions and campaigns. And this is just the beginning. And we'll show you all of the other things that you can do with the power of Microsoft AI for your frontline. Now, the future of your business really depends on empowering your frontline workforce, and that future is right now. A recent survey showed that 80% of frontline workers think AI will help them find the right answers quickly, and 69% of frontline workers are comfortable using AI for administrative tasks. So why wait? Get started off today, and we'll show you how easy it is to get started and how easy it is to incrementally build on the AI solutions you want to offer to your frontline. So that's what we're most excited about with today's session. Now, again, employees are not waiting for their company to adopt AI. They're already using it. There's an opportunity to ensure that this AI is secure, governed, and compliant. We have a whole section towards the end of the presentation today that shows you exactly why Microsoft AI is the most secure, compliant, and governed out there. And 75% of these workers we surveyed say they're using AI tools at work, with usage nearly doubling over the last 6 months. And surprisingly, 78% of these AI users are bringing their own AI to work. You have no clue how governed or compliant it is. You have no clue if they're putting private, confidential company data into AI systems that you don't know or don't trust. So the solution to all of this is the Microsoft AI suite. Now, with that context, introduction, and frame, we head to our first question that we would love for you guys to give input. What is motivating your AI frontline investment? What are you looking to solve with the help of AI as it relates to your frontline? As you get that on your screen and you start putting in your responses, I hand it over to my friend and colleague, Irina, to take over the presentation.
Thanks ever so much. Hi, everybody. I'll give you a few moments to reply because we'd love to hear even just why you're here. And if there's anything in particular you'd like to learn more about as well. All right. Okay. So let's kick off our journey through the AI experiences that Woodgrove is looking to provide and enable the employees with. And again, a quick reminder around the strategic business goals, and I will do my absolute best to highlight the various experiences and how they help Woodgrove achieve those goals through those experiences. So let's kick off with a few examples here. And one of the first places to start where Woodgrove's AI journey starts is really with secure chat. Now, secure AI chat, so Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, it is powered by the latest models. And in fact, I think this was an announcement as of yesterday, powered by GPT-5. Very exciting. And I'll share a little bit more detail around what does that actually mean later on if we have an opportunity. But really, Copilot Chat is there to enable employees at Woodgrove to get support with a variety of queries. And we'll see those examples in a second. We'll also hear more from Natalie on this, but one of the reasons why Woodgrove chose Microsoft 365 Copilot, it's because it offers the safety, security, and compliance that is really unrivaled. So it's one of the fundamental whys customers that I work with choose our solution. And again, you'll hear a bit more detail from Natalie on this, but just as we kick off, one of the things I want to make sure that I share is that the data that is being shared in the Copilot Chat within your enterprise, within Woodgrove's enterprise solution, is secure. And Woodgrove remains in full control of the data. And that data is not used to train or enrich foundation models. So then whatever GPT-6 or 5.1 or whatever the next thing will be is not going to be based on the information that Woodgrove is providing. Now, also the other reason that Woodgrove has selected this tool for some of the scenarios that we'll see coming up, it's because they are protected against AI security and copyright risks. Again, more from Natalie on the topic of responsible AI and ethics, as well as security and compliance. But for now, one of the things that I wanted to highlight as we delve into the use cases and examples is really that Copilot Chat, that AI chat experience comes in two flavors, essentially. You have the work mode, and then you have the web mode. Now, the main difference between these two is that the work mode is the one that comes with that $30 per employee, per user per month license. And then the web version is the one that Microsoft provides every single employee with as part of a foundation license. So employees at Woodgrove have got access to FSQs, and that means that they get access to the secure AI chat that is web grounded. And again, we'll go through examples of kind of what sort of use cases you can enable there. One thing I did want to call out is that some of the more recent changes is that work and web, especially having a particular license, so having the full license so that you have access to work versus having an included experience of Microsoft 365 Copilot with web grounded, you still get access to the latest models. So that exciting announcement around GPT-5, it's still there, but there's a little differentiation in terms of potentially access. So if you don't have that, so employees at Woodgrove, for example, would have web-based included Microsoft 365 Copilot experience, and what it means is that they get standard access. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not as great as the priority access, but sometimes you might have a slightly different, the speed of response might be just a little bit delayed, or there are a couple of other ways in which that standard access might just be a little bit different to priority access. Again, we can share a bit more information on that, but I wanted to highlight that in that sometimes consistency of experience, because one of the things that we're trying to do at Microsoft is to ensure that everybody has access to this incredible technology. And so that means sometimes based on the day and the demand, the service might be a little bit different. So just an expectation setting on that. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of examples of the innovation that comes with Microsoft 365 Copilot for employees at Woodgrove. So we'll kick off with a simple example. Now, here we have a often, and this is challenge with Woodgrove, as is with a lot of customers that I work with, you have a variety of queries, customers coming in with different questions, and you're really not sure what to expect. This was actually based on an example from a customer that I worked with, where they provided an example of a recipe that somebody had handwritten, and they brought into the store, and they said that I needed a way to essentially assess what are the ingredients there, and then figure out the shopping list for that recipe and help the customer in the store to navigate to those items. So this example here that we've created is looking at a recipe that is not vegan and asking Copilot Chat to help me create a vegan version of that recipe, and then also generate a shopping list based on that so that I can assist a customer that is standing in front of me with the various items that they need to buy in order to, keep their vegan friend happy. So it's a very simple example that we'll kick things off with, because I think it highlights a couple of really critical things. It highlights the ability of Microsoft 365 Copilot to support what we would refer to as kind of multimodal interaction. So I can upload photos, and then I can also essentially ask for specific things that I'm looking from that. So extracting analysis of images and helping me help a customer that is standing in front of me. So a very simple example. Now, the one thing, and we'll see specificity later on in our in how we can kind of take this example further, because the exciting thing here is you could, for example, add more information about the specific Woodgrove store, or if you have an opportunity to connect to the inventory information, which we'll show you how to do, then this becomes a highly powerful example that not only helps me understand as an employee at Woodgrove how to help a customer that is standing in front of me, what do the ingredients for a vegan jambalaya look like, but it also helps me understand which ingredients might be on offer and where do I find them, and do we have anything in stock, and suggest alternatives based on the availability of stock. So a very simple example just to kind of get us grounded in some of the capabilities. Now, the next example that I wanted to run through is often we hear the need for translation support is really critical, and you will have, there's a variety of translation tools, but this is again kind of really simple example based on what we've seen before with customers really unlock the power, or helping frontline employees unlock this sort of this extra power. And it's being able to take a product and essentially again analyzing the image and saying, hey, can you let me know if there are specific allergens there that this customer who is Italian speaking should be made aware of. So this is again a very simple example of embedding some of the translation capabilities that just comes out of the box and helps an employee, helps an employee at Woodgrove just really feel empowered to do the best job that they can. So they have this kind of multimodal, multi-purpose tool at their fingertips. So the next example that again we're building, and these are just examples of essentially asking Copilot Chat to help me with specific challenges that I'm facing at Woodgrove. But another one might be, and we've seen examples of kind of a lot of help tickets being created, or not necessarily knowing the processes because they're all in binders and it's hard to access. And I'm potentially somebody who is trying to figure out how I can best help myself as a Woodgrove employee. So this is, again, a very simple example of being able to take a photo of something and then saying, hey, I'm actually struggling to leverage this to connect to my merchandising display. What are some of the places that I can start with from a troubleshooting perspective? So again, this isn't specific to Woodgrove's processes, which we'll see how to enable later on. But this is a really great place for me to try and get a little bit of that self-service going, right? And again, I wanted to bring those examples in because it shows you the power of what you can get just out of the box by enabling Copilot Chat. But it's just a really nice way to help employees kind of help themselves. So a really quick example there as well. Now, when it comes to as we've seen some of the great examples before, but some of the challenges with that is, okay, if I need the specific information to do with the Woodgrove store that I'm in, that I'm either going to have to make sure that I add it to every single prompt, or I can actually create an agent that helps me do just that. So the way to think about agents is to really, it's kind of packaged up capabilities and really instructions that help the agent, the intelligence to really be grounded in what it is that you're looking to deliver as an outcome. So I'm not having to potentially type every single time the store, or I'm not having to say, can you make sure that when you reply to me, you get information that is associated with Woodgrove and not with potentially a competitor. So agents is a way in which you can kind of wrap up specificity that is required without having to write extremely lengthy prompts. That's one of the easiest ways to think about it. And we'll go into, there's a lot more nuance to it, and we'll go into that detail. But we'll kick off kind of our agents or agentic path adventure with an example right here. So again, it's a really really easy or a really nice way to package up specific outcomes that we're looking for. So one of the places where you can access agents is essentially looking at the menu and actually navigating to a specific agent. And so as an example, let us navigate to an agent that will actually build later on. And it's an agent that helps employees at Woodgrove to open and close the store. And it follows the specific procedures for that Woodgrove store. And this is a very simple and light agent that we've built just to showcase the capability. So here, as you can see, some of the main differences is that when a Woodgrove employee is coming in, they have some starter prompts that they can kick off the experience with, to kick off that process with. So here I'm saying that I'm a key holder and I'm in the store, and can you help me actually go through the closing procedure checklist? So this very simple process helps me drive through the kind of the end-to-end process, but also those references, right? It's where are those specific references that are critical for me as an employee, and just to make sure that I'm actually reading information or getting information that I need without having to read that massive master document which is often completely inaccessible. So another way in which I'm leveraging this agent at Woodgrove is to support me when things don't necessarily go according to plan. So we can go through the process, and we've seen this a lot. A lot of the customers we work with, it's not that they don't have technology, they have a lot of technology, but it tends to be highly structured in the way it is accessible to frontline. So you have to follow process. Automation is highly prescribed, and then when things don't quite go right, that's when things kind of tend to break down, and then employees revert back to all the ways of doing things. And so a really simple example of when things don't work, one of the things that agents offer is that flexibility to support when things don't quite work according to plan. So this is a very simple example of, hey, something didn't quite work correctly. What is my path here? How do I escalate? So again, a very simple example of an agent that we'll see in action and how to build later on. But it really helps us see how I move from chat AI chat from early on, where I have kind of this humongous power at my fingertips as a Woodgrove employee to go and look for information and support me with a lot of broad range questions so that I can really self-serve when it comes to finding the answers that I'm looking for, to now we're seeing examples of the kind of specific behavior that Woodgrove wants me to be enabled with. So I can go through the process and those challenges that we've heard before with Woodgrove around not necessarily having simplified processes, or those procedures being something that is difficult to read and understand because they're in binders. This is an example of how this could be fairly easily resolved and made accessible to frontline employees. Now, the other example that we're going to move on to next is, as we're moving away kind of from this natural language way of interacting, we do know that a lot of our frontline customers and colleagues, and Woodgrove is not unique in that, are looking maybe sometimes to kind of jump into an existing process. And so when you're looking for a little bit more proactivity, as an example, so I want to make sure that this agentic system or this new solution actually tells an employee at Woodgrove that they have a task. So instead of kind of them going in and sort of naturally interacting with this agent, there is a way in which you might want to introduce proactivity, and we have that option as well. So an example that you're seeing here is a custom agent, as was before, but essentially what this is that it helps you, it gives you a little bit more of maybe some of the things you might be familiar with from a platform perspective. So let's say, and I'm sure you've seen it in previous sessions, with us. If you join Frontline Fridays, we had shown you tasking capabilities, so Planner, and some of the other applications that you have as part of the Microsoft solution for Frontline. So this is a really nice way to really bring generative AI capabilities, Microsoft 365 Copilot power into those experiences and really kind of creating, I would say, kind of the best of both worlds. So here I have a task, and then I can actually review the task. And let's say I actually have a question about the task. So this is, again, a really nice way to create an agent that has a little bit more of that constraint around how you want that experience to be, especially if you have some familiar kind of user interfaces or experiences that you just want to kind of complement with generative AI. This is a really good example of how to do that. So now we've seen two examples so far of agents, and kind of you can see how you have slightly different ways of building them. And then again, as I said, we'll go through the specific ways of building one of the first agents that we had looked at. So another place where, because again, Woodgrove, just like every other customer, is saying, why do I even need to think about agents? Like what's in it? So we've seen how progressively agents, one of the reasons why you might want to build an agent is that it gives you that tightly scoped, outcome-driven experience, right? Leveraging generative AI. Now, the second example that we've seen is that how it really helps you also plug into maybe an existing process. The example that I'm about to walk you through, I think, is a really great example of how you could kind of put the natural language or the natural way of interacting with a solution, with an AI-powered solution, whilst having the systems in the back end and integrations and thinking through how does this actually work together, so that it's abstracted from the employee in Woodgrove. And so at Woodgrove, they have, as we've heard, they have UKG for scheduling management, there's ADP for payroll, there's Workday for some of the other kind of HR related components. But what's interesting is that as an employee at Woodgrove, there are specific hours that I need to make sure that I do in order for me to retain the benefits that I have. So for me to make sure that I retain my dental care, I have to do specific hours. And so one of the challenges I have is actually doing the mental mathematics of benefits, which is in Workday, versus hours that I do, which is in UKG, versus potentially some contractual obligations and payroll and pay implications in ADP. How do I, as an employee, actually navigate across these systems? So what this does is really helps put the employee at Woodgrove kind of query first. And so I can ask, well, what if I continue working the schedule that I have right now? Will I actually retain my benefits? And so in the back end, those integrated systems and generative AI helps provide an answer back to say, hey, actually, what might be best is to pick up a couple of extra shifts, just so that you're on the safe side. And so here in this one single experience, I can also request the additional shift, which is now going to my manager. So it's a really nice example of, I would say, some of the more advanced scenarios that we see with our customers, where the challenges of these disparate systems that are really powering critical processes from an employee perspective to actually be something that can now really function for bringing that frontline employee front and center, because it really is about helping them achieve an outcome that they're looking for without necessarily having to design a new experience altogether, where I'm now having, buttons that I click in terms of the hours and I put some figures, which again, some of the things that we would have tried to do maybe a couple of years back is to actually design this new interface for an employee to get the answer that they're looking for. What this unlocks is there's no longer need to do that, because you have a really nice way of integrating those systems, and then kind of layering generative AI as part of it helps unlock these more advanced scenarios. So again, I just wanted to give you a couple of ideas in terms of what are some of the ways in which you can really bring generative AI and specifically the power of Copilot in the hands of employees, such as we had seen at Woodgrove. So I'm going to take a sip of coffee before I completely lose my voice. But whilst I do that, I would love to actually ask you a question. From examples that we've seen, anything sparks, any ideas that you have, or is there one specific process or outcome or task that you think might really benefit from AI? So I see the answers are coming in from daily tasks, huddle summaries, sites, SharePoint sites. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Okie dokie. So let's move on to the next kind of part of our session together, our time together today, and that's really looking at how do we make those experiences real. So I've shown you quite a few examples. So let's go through the implementation path, the how to make this real. So a quick summary. The three examples that we had seen at the very beginning. So that's if you remember, the Italian customer that is looking to ensure that there are no specific allergens that they might be worried about. Then there is the ingredients, the recipe conversion to vegan version with ingredients and a shopping list associated with that, and then some early troubleshooting when it comes to merchandising display. And then we had seen a few examples of custom agents. And so those were hopefully it's all good. So, and a few examples of the custom agent. So we had seen an example of an agent that is really grounded in information around procedures, so that employees at Woodgrove have access to the opening and closing of the store procedures, and then support if things don't go quite according to plan. And then we had seen two examples from one example which was around tasking, and then another example which really looked at marrying up these systems that provide the workforce scheduling data, the HR data, but really from an employee perspective, so that the answer that they really need is easily accessible to them. So questions I often get asked is when it comes to those solutions or these kind of technologies, what's best and when do I use it? And it really depends, because on the first three examples is really essentially prompt engineering. So it's being able to ask the breadth, the wealth, the power of information that you have access to via Copilot Chat. And what we had seen is actually Copilot Web Chat. So I didn't focus on the work too much, because I know that sometimes cost can be quite a sort of a sensitive topic. So on the Copilot Web Chat, the experience that is included, even with the lowest enterprise license, that experience requires really clear prompting. And so what that means is that, yes, it's great, but there's a lot of education, training, and support that's needed. There are additional ways in which you can help drive that behavior, but really there you're looking at it's in the hands of your employees to make sure that they're using it correctly. And as we move towards a place where maybe you want to define specific proactivity, if you want more control, if you really want to design the experience a little bit better, if there's specific knowledge that you want to make sure is used versus everything else, if there are specific capabilities that you're looking to unlock, and most critically, if you're looking for autonomy. So what we had seen are examples of kind of semi-autonomous and autonomous agents. So an example before where it sort of said, hey, you have a task. So that was one. But then the latter example we had seen where the agent essentially will autonomously, because I did say that I would like to pick up an extra shift, but there is increased autonomy there. So the more autonomy, interactivity, proactivity, control, basically the more specificity, the more uniqueness you're looking for, then you're really looking into the custom agent space. So just again, very broad, and I know we won't have a chance to delve into the kind of what are the exact decisions, but I find that model quite helpful. And it's also very helpful to understand what can I unlock when it comes to sort of the beginning of that spectrum versus trying to figure out how do I build the complex things towards the end of the spectrum, which again, for high value scenarios is a really great place to be. But the kind of the beginning of the spectrum is something that you can really unlock very quickly. So we looked at custom agents. They really come in two flavors, and it's important that we go through that because there is the example of the first agent that we had seen, and then the latter agent. They're slightly different. But before we delve into those kind of flavors of agents, I actually wanted us to ground in, wanted everyone here to sort of have a bit of an anatomy lesson. So I really like to understand the behavior, the kind of the architecture of an agent, because it helps us understand what are the things that we can do with an agent. Why do we even need to explore an agentic experience? So from an architectural perspective, you can think of an AI agent as really sort of, again, as I mentioned, a really packaged up set of capabilities. So from what you have is you have this, from a Microsoft perspective, you have this foundation model. Now, these foundation models in the Microsoft Copilot stack is really kind of that brain, right? And I mean, it's the brain that, and when we talked about GPT-5, that's sort of where that goodness comes in. So the foundation models are really there. That is, doing the reasoning, the heavy lifting, the large language models. It's all of that goodness that we had seen, that we see on the news around what generative AI can actually bring. Now, the orchestrator is a really critical component of that because it's the thing that decides, based on what the employee wants or what question they have or what support they need, what do I actually need to use to reply to that most effectively? What knowledge is needed? What skills is needed, etc. So the orchestrator, just like somebody who is orchestrating in a concert, is making a lot of those decisions. You then have the knowledge, which is a critical part of what kind of makes an agent. And that's really providing, go and make sure that you look in this website or make sure that you reference only these materials. This is also a place where you define instructions, and we'll see that in the next example. But this is really how you would like the agent to behave, so that maybe, every time it replies to an employee, it says, "Awesome job." I don't know. Well, essentially instructions and grounding what information that agent is grounded in is a really critical component of how to think about an agent. Skills is all the capabilities. Will your agent be able to maybe create images or reason over summarize specific documents? Will it take some information and automatically create an output based on that you would like to be in a specific way? So skills is really around capabilities, triggers, workflows, all the sort of magic that you want to make happen. And then autonomy is something that defines the level of autonomy an agent has. There are several levels. We had seen examples of kind of various types of autonomy, but autonomy is really, is this agent something that it only does things when asked, or is this agent agent essentially autonomous and able to act on behalf of? So does it work alongside or on behalf of your team? So it really depends on the process of what it is that you're looking to achieve. But again, it's a really nice way to think about agents as thinking around what knowledge, skills, autonomy they have. And of course, Orchestrator and the foundation models. Now, the other place that I tend to also think about is when it comes to an agent is the UI and the UX. Now, think of the UI as how does a human that is interacting with this agentic AI experience, how are they interacting with it? Is it via voice? Is it by typing? Is it language? Is it cards? Is it just tapping on prompts? And then the UX is where they're interacting with it. So think of it, is it, just to put it simply, what we had seen as examples of interacting in Copilot Chat, which is the UI, in UX, which we had seen two examples of. We've seen it in Teams, for example, right? So, so thinking of the where and then the how that interaction happens, I personally find quite helpful because there are various, especially when you think about Microsoft, and there is a lot of Copilot everywhere. So it's important to ask yourself as you're designing an experience for your frontline is to think through those pieces to make sure that it actually serves the purpose that you're looking for. So to a quick wrap up, really, to think of an agent, it's really having all of those components together. And so they have an opportunity to work on behalf of a human or a team or an organization, as well as alongside them. But when we're designing agents, we really think about all of those pieces and how they come together. And I find, again, I'm sorry for this potentially boring part of the session. Hopefully it's not as boring as maybe some of the other pieces, but it's a very critical, I really find it helpful to think of the anatomy because it helps us then distinguish some of the different types of agents that we have and some of the different types of agents that we can build. And one of the things that I do also like to share is that when you think around Microsoft 365 Copilot, actually it is one big agent, right? It's we have designed Microsoft 365 Copilot experience exactly using the same architecture principles. And so all of those pieces around foundation model, autonomy, skills, knowledge, orchestrator, these are all pieces that make up the Microsoft 365 Copilot experience. And so again, you have different types of UX and UI, and how do you actually interact with it? So I know this is, to me, it's really helpful to think of it this way, but because you see this sort of, it's Microsoft 365 Copilot, then there are product teams that design those experiences. And so it means that often it's about, getting that product out of the box. But we do hear from customers that say, actually, I just want to maybe work a little bit around, specify the knowledge where Microsoft 365 Copilot goes to get information. Or I want to do, want to be very specific around the type of things it can do. And this is when we get to what we refer to, and hopefully some of you have worked with this before, as a declarative agent. So a declarative agent is basically a type of agent that declares to Microsoft 365 Copilot around how it should behave. You're not having to kind of work around the foundation models, the orchestrator, or even the user experience, because those pieces come with the experience, but you have an opportunity to define the instructions and the grounding, and also define some of the actions and the capabilities, which we'll see in a second. But you also note that there are some pieces that are not yet available for you to really kind of tweak. So things like autonomy or workflows or triggers. And that's why in the first example of an agent where we had that open and close procedure, there was no proactivity that says, hey, Irina, I know you're about to kind of finish your shift. Now it's time to go through that closing procedure. So again, this is a point in time and we're always evolving our capabilities, but it's a really nice way to think about agent experiences, that you have this incredible opportunity to create really bespoke agents, which we will create in a second, that are called declarative agents that still make use of all of the goodness that Microsoft 365 Copilot provides, but you still have control over core pieces of how it behaves. So, and we'll see that in action. So that's a declarative agent. Now, the next example of an agent type is the custom engine agent. And this is really like you can choose to bring your own orchestrator foundation models. You can really define how that agent behaves, and that is also supported. So again, just think of that spectrum. The more control, the more tailoring you're looking to bring in, then you're really in the custom engine agent space. So two core critical types of agents. And where this is kind of, again, if we look at the anatomy of an agent, the architecture, you can 100% design pretty much everything from scratch. And this is really great if, as maybe you already have a pretty mature AI strategy and platform in place. So this becomes a really nice way for you to think about, so when I'm designing experience for my employees, where would we create that? So when we think about custom engine agents, we give you actually tools to build those, despite the fact that you can control quite a lot of things with a low-code way, and that is using Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio, the best way to think about it is that it gives you that visual way as a developer, as a maker, as a creator of the agentic experience to tweak and change and create, kind of define all of these pieces. And you have a few choices, because you can, for example, choose to use our orchestrator and foundation models. So that means that you have that nice visual way of defining actions, knowledge, and autonomy. Or you can even go all the way into the pro code way, where you define everything from scratch. So again, I just wanted to share that because we have, and maybe this is, I'm just going to maybe flash this slide. I'm not going to drain it, I promise. But I know when it comes to agentic experiences, especially talking to my customers, they often get a little bit confused, like, hey, I have so many tools. And really, there are a lot of tools for making and building experiences. And they really break up into, depending on the level of coding approach that you'd like to implement the experience with, you can, it ranges from no code experience. So for example, you go to a SharePoint page or a SharePoint site, and you have an opportunity to create a Microsoft 365 Copilot agent from that. So that's an example of a declarative agent that you create without building any code. And that means, of course, the experience is fairly well defined because you are within the SharePoint environment. You also have an example of Agent Builder, which allows you to create a lot more, kind of define a little bit more of the experience, and it's still a no-code way. You can then move towards a low-code and pro-code way, and again, depending on which type of agent you're building. The reason why this matters right now, it will matter less and less as the agentic evolution really matures. It really is at this stage, I think, declarative agent, to me, the biggest decision is, it's essentially thinking through, how much do I want to be able to declare to Microsoft 365 Copilot of how it should behave versus, if I'm in the custom engine agent space, then I really can bring my own foundation model, my own orchestrator that's really on there in a place where maybe you already have that in place. But basically, as per usual, spectrums of things. You have a spectrum of coding approaches, you have a spectrum of tools, and you have a spectrum of building solutions. The thing that is not here, but I do want to call it out, is that we also enable you to bring Copilot experiences into your solutions, and that's using Copilot APIs. But that's for a more advanced session. But essentially, anything you can imagine, that's probably doable. So, okay. Now that we've seen the tools for enabling the experiences, now that we've seen the tools for actually building the experiences, I wanted to run you through, again, for the time today, I think I'm already running over. I wanted to share just a few key steps to get you going, maybe even today. So you could walk away and recreate some of the experiences that we showed you. Now, step one is enabling that AI chat experience. And the way you do this is essentially making sure that it is ideally prepinned and discoverable by your employees. Now, within the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you have an opportunity to do just that. So you could go, you have this dedicated, this is a little bit out of date because we've already refined the controls that you have access to, but you can still navigate to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center and under Copilot, find the relevant controls. And here I'm walking you through an example of making sure that the experience is pinned. Now, pinning this experience means that Copilot Chat is discoverable across the various UX and UI places that your frontline employees might find themselves in. So that's kind of step one. The second step that I think is I also tend to highlight is that there are a lot of controls around what you can enable. But if you remember the very first kind of three examples, when we talk about AI chat being web grounded, it's, there are kind of two things that I think are really important to understand. On one side, we have basically this, this AI intelligence brain large language model. It's been trained on web-based data. So it'll have information about, it'll make decisions, it'll create outputs based on that web-based data. And then we have kind of on the other side, ability for AI chat to go and actually verify things in using live web search. So this is, again, a very, I think, critical part of the experience because, and I find an example of asking what date it is, a very useful way to verify, because if I ask Copilot Chat that doesn't have access to live web search, what date it is, as an example, it might kind of randomly provide some sort of date that it thinks might be relevant to me or might be important. So, 18th of June, 1986. Whereas if it has the power of live web search, then it can actually go and verify what is today's date so that it comes back to me with the answers that are relevant. And again, it's relevant for information like if I convert a recipe into a vegan recipe, but then if I'm looking for ingredients that are currently sold in the store right now, that live web search becomes quite a critical part of the solution, potentially, unless you kind of put that inventory system directly in so that AI chat have access to that. So the next bit that I wanted to show you, and it is enabled by default as far as I know, but I know that a lot of customers maybe sometimes have might have switched it off. So this particular experience is just showcasing you how you can go and define various policies that are associated with Copilot Chat so that, for example, you can decide that specific set of employees have got access to that live web search and understand what is associated with that decision right there. So again, there's a lot of policies, and I just wanted to highlight one of the controls that I think is really important for the experience holistically, and it's that live web search. So again, a lot of granular control is available and more is coming as well, but it's an opportunity for you to really feel like it's not just this humongous tool that you are unleashing on your employees, but there's control that you have over it and that you can define that experience. All right. Okay. So now let's get to, I know, desperately running out of time, but I think we will we'll do this justice. And we're almost at the end of my session. So again, I can drink a little bit more coffee before we get to the next bit. All right. So now let's actually create that agent that we had seen at the beginning in the use cases example. So we have this store opening and closing assist agent as a reminder, and this agent clearly goes to specific references to provide information to me, and so we'll see how that happens. So this is an example of a declarative agent that I'm building. In this declarative agent, what I'm doing is I am defining the name and obviously picking a really cool icon because that's important. I have an opportunity to define the description. So the description, and we provide best practices on how to do it, but I just wanted to highlight a little bit of what that could look like. And then the instructions, that's really the meat, right? Because here you have an opportunity to define the types of actions, the knowledge, the how it should behave, what type of output it should provide, some of the rules around interactions, maybe some of the cultural adaptations that you're looking for and localization that you need to make sure is there. But also defining some of those processes directly there, as well as supplementing it with procedural documents, which we get to in the knowledge section. So the knowledge section allows you to define data sources that might be connected directly to your Microsoft 365 environment. So this is using Copilot connectors. Now, leveraging Copilot connectors does come at a cost. So bearing in mind how you're kind of defining that solution. So when it comes to Copilot connectors, you have either some ready-made connectors, so you can even create some custom connectors for yourself. So that's a really powerful way. Now, the Copilot connector, another kind of question that a lot of my customers ask is, I just want to bring some information in. What's the value of Copilot connectors? And there's a lot of value, but the best thing, the way I think about it is that I need to know information about ServiceNow because Woodgrove leverages ServiceNow for ticketing. But what also is important is having a lot of awareness around what's happening in the Microsoft 365 world, who this employee is talking to, who their manager is, what was the last thing that they did. So having that awareness, that semantic index is really critical. And that's what also comes with Copilot Connector. So you have kind of this added benefit of making sure that it's not just kind of relevant information, but it's information that is made contextual and relevant by bringing it into the Microsoft 365 boundary. So that's an option. But you could also make sure that if you kind of not necessarily looking for that, you could go for that web specific experience. And here I'm showing you an example of specifying a website that would have the information. But there's also other ways in which you could, for example, let's say your website is powered by specific public APIs, and you just want to bring that information that actually has information about your inventory into the declarative agent. You can do that, and that would also be considered a way of building an agent that doesn't trigger the metering on the Copilot side. So it doesn't trigger the message rate on the Copilot side. There's obviously a cost associated with the API itself, but that's kind of almost outside of the agentic experience. Or it stays the same as you've had before. So there are kind of various ways in which you can build an agent. And so when we talk about web-grounded and web-based, if your knowledge and instructions are web-based, then that, again, doesn't trigger the message rate from a Copilot experience side. So if I'm just building without any connectors, if I'm just building an agent that is grounded in web, then that, again, becomes a really high-value, low-cost way, because it's part of the standard license way to enable use cases and scenarios for Frontline. Now, the other place that I can do is, of course, reference specific files or SharePoint. So again, really critically, that there's an opportunity for me to scope the sources of knowledge that I needed for the agent. Okay. So one thing I did want to also highlight is that, of course, again, this is some of the capabilities like code interpreter, which I think is, it's kind of sounds weird, but it's superbly highly powerful. So a really great way to analyze things and provide information back. Image generator, some of the capabilities that you can enable. And I think I might have it here, but I wanted to highlight one thing in particular, which is, and hopefully you can follow along as I'm doing this, which is this really powerful button right there. So this option right here, when you're creating an agent, allows you to decide whether the agent should prioritize knowledge sources that you provide, right? So this is, again, a really powerful way to make sure that the agent behaves first, goes to the information that it has access to. So again, it's just one way to make sure that you're getting a little bit of, not predictability, but a little bit more of the specificity that you're looking to drive. Now, lastly, as we conclude, the fun thing to do, I struggle with this one all the time because I don't know how to title them, but it's a really great way, those prompts that we had seen when you open up an agent, so that it makes it easier for me to kickstart an agent to actually tell it what to do, so you define those in the starter prompts. So this was a very quick way for us to kind of run through the agent and the agent that we had seen in action and how to build it. So this is again using an agent builder, but there are other ways of building a similar type of experience. It's just visually this is much easier to follow. Okay, I'm so sorry for those for my fellow speakers. I will conclude in like under a minute. So thank you for sticking with me so far. We've gone through quite a lot of technical detail, but hopefully it has been helpful for you to see how to actually pull the experience for your frontline together. And you have a couple of options, and I always think of like building blocks. So you have option one, which is the kind of the tenant grounded. So this is the work tab that you had seen in AI chat. This is basically kind of the everything within the Microsoft 365 boundary that you can enable via Copilot for employees to have access to. Then the second piece of the solution could be your web grounded experiences, and we had seen those specifically throughout the session today. You then have Microsoft built agents. So Microsoft 365 Copilot, as we had learned, is one big agent behind the scene, but there are other specific agents that Microsoft builds that you are probably leveraging if you're within the various Microsoft apps. So these are very bespoke and built for our customers for a specific need. There are also ready-made agents that other companies built, like ServiceNow and other partners out there that build agents and make sure that customers can access it via a catalog. And then the last piece of the equation is you have the option of building your own agents. And that's what we had seen actually in the last example, is really building your own agents. And as I mentioned, you have kind of a variety of options there, from kind of your appetite for coding and approaches, etc. Okay, so on that, there is a quick summary from the pricing, which again, I reiterate that you don't necessarily need to spend kind of the full subscription license. It makes sense for various use cases, but basically with that, you get work, web, and Microsoft capabilities. But if you want to start with free or included as part of your core enterprise license, you can start with web grounded, and then actually think through, how do I supplement that with agents? And again, agents can start from zero, especially if they're web grounded declarative agents. So on that, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I think I went over. And we have a question to the audience, and I will hand over, I think it's Vishal who might be speaking. I know Natalie covered the next section yesterday, but I'll hand over to my fellow colleagues.
Great, let's just give you all a moment to respond to the poll.
But think about this. This is an important poll, so please do fill in your details and your desires in this one.
For those of you who like researcher and analyst, think about this as another first-party agent, if we were to build one.
Right, I'm seeing responses like product information, communications. Keep them coming, everyone. And feel free to continue responding. Let's jump into reviewing some of the top security and governance concerns that we hear about generative AI. So the first is that leaders are concerned about data oversharing and data leaks. And I did see a lot of chats about sensitivity labels. So let's definitely talk about that during the Q&A section. And the fear here is that Gen AI tools might grant faster access to content with incorrect permissions, making these files easier to locate. The second is that security leaders want to quickly identify risky AI use, such as when a user suddenly begins interacting with a large volume of sensitive data using generative AI. And the third is we hear that leaders also want AI governance and risk visibility, desiring insights into prompts and responses to ensure they comply with the organization's use policies. So let's take a look at how Microsoft 365 Copilot can help address some of these top concerns. So you can assess oversharing risks by getting visibility into overshared content. Some of the key things that you can do here is use reports and dashboards to identify content that may have been shared too broadly. You can fix excessive permissions using policy recommendations from the oversharing report. And optionally, you can prevent Copilot from processing or referencing any files that are labeled as sensitive. The second is you can protect against data loss and insider risks. So you can review how users interact with Microsoft 365 Copilot and get alerts if risky behavior occurs, such as unethical usage, copyright violations, or attempts to access a large volume of sensitive content. You can protect sensitive files wherever they live or travel. Copilot responses and Copilot created files will inherit protections from the source file. And you can also dynamically apply security policies based on these risky actions. So for example, if a user performs a series of Copilot actions that indicate a high level of risk, we can automatically add them to more strict security policy. Third tool is you can govern AI use to meet regulations and policies. Visibility into Copilot interaction text, linked files, as well as audit log entries for these Copilot interactions. And also, Copilot interactions are included in admin search results, such as investigations for compliance purposes, potential ethical violations, or for litigation or legal reasons. And lastly, you can manage the lifecycle of Copilot prompts and responses alongside all of your Microsoft 365 data. You can also put Copilot prompts and responses on a legal hold. We know that customers trust Microsoft 365 with their sensitive data because of the foundation of trust we built through the commitments to protect customers and the controls we make available directly to customers. These same commitments and controls apply to prompts and responses in M365 Copilot and Copilot Chat. When it comes to these commitments, we help protect your data with encryption at rest and in transit through rigorous physical security controls and data isolation between tenants. Our time-tested approach to data privacy is grounded in our commitment to give you control over the data you put in the cloud. In other words, you control your data. Microsoft guarantees this with the contractual commitments we make to you. Thirdly, prompts, responses, and web search queries in Copilot aren't used to train any of our foundation models. And you're protected against AI security and copyright risks. We help safeguard against AI-focused risks such as harmful content, prompt injections, and for content copyright concerns, we provide protected material detection and our customer copyright commitment. And on that note, I will pass this on to my colleague, Vishal, to close the session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie. So let's talk about some of the next steps and calls to action. We have explored Microsoft's AI offerings through powerful frontline use cases, and we've covered the essential tools to help you secure and govern your Copilot use. Now, let's shift gears and dive into how you can bring AI into your organization, unlocking real value and driving meaningful transformation. So these are the three essentials for AI and Copilot success across the entire stack that Microsoft has to offer. So from our customer learnings and from our very own AI adoption at Microsoft, we have identified these three essentials. The first is leadership and sponsorship. So these are critical for aligning AI investments to business priorities and defining high value scenarios. Best practice is to create an AI council from representatives across the organization to help guide and measure adoption. And more than anything else, show for efficiency, show why AI is creating a difference. The second is human change. So this requires a dedicated work stream. Essential to any kind of change program is effective communications and communities for best practice sharing, skilling and training, as well as measuring progress and acting on that feedback. Now, a best practice here is using the Copilot dashboard to plan your deployment and measure the impact of Copilot on your business outcomes. So we have a very interesting session 2 of Frontline Fridays, which is focused on change management all up for the frontline. So I would highly recommend that you tune into that session on demand at ak.ms/Frontline Fridays. And the third is technical readiness, including things like securing your data infrastructure, risk management, technical skilling, all of that stuff. So the best practice here is to create an AI center of excellence with skilled resources that can act as a shared service and drive knowledge transfer across the entire organization and sharing some of these best practices across the entire organization. Now, to further support our customers, we've created a Copilot Success Kit as well, which includes a collection of these resources to help accelerate your organization's onboarding and adoption. It includes several tools, including an implementation summary guide, user enablement guides, the Copilot scenario library, the prompt gallery, and much more. I encourage you to visit our Copilot Adoption Hub to access all of this at aka.ms/Copilot Adoption Hub. This session and all of the nuggets that we shared with you as well will be available on demand in 7 to 10 days. So please share this with your teammates, the rest of your organization as well, because we believe it's a powerful tool to unlock AI value for your frontline. Now, at the beginning of the call, I spoke about some of the strategic business goals that Woodgrove has. Now, let's see how AI can help solve for a lot of these business goals or augment existing solutions and technological capabilities and make it even better to solve these scenarios. So, Woodgrove's successful adoption of AI tools is helping Woodgrove meet its strategic business goals and has transformed the daily experience of its frontline associates. Earlier in this session, we saw how Copilot Chat and agents can help provide associates with product recommendation, understanding return policies, getting their assigned tasks, and asking for help on a task. Rather than searching through these lengthy manuals and navigating documents with hundreds of pages or switching between multiple apps to track work, report issues in 1P, 3P services, now these associates can go to one central place to ask for everything that they need. It's faster, simpler, secure, and reduces IT help desk calls as well. With the full M365 Copilot experience and the licensing that Irina shared with us, associates can take this one step further. Woodgrove can do even more. Instead of printing out their communications or huddling in person for updates, associates can just ask M365 Copilot to instantly summarize unread chat and channel activity, whether they're starting a shift, returning from a break, they can get up to speed on everything in just a few seconds. Copilot can also extract a lot of decisions, action items, and next steps from these huddles or meetings. It can transcribe all of these conversations as well and can take notes. So you have very effective next steps. So you don't really need a designated note taker anymore. Copilot will take on that charter. Copilot can also generate draft layouts, signage copies, or even visual mockups to accelerate in-store execution. So next time when you have a holiday promotion event or a sales event or anything of that sort, you don't have to spend minutes or hours coming up with that content. In a matter of seconds, Copilot can do it and can do it much better than any of us can in a lot of cases. And that's just the beginning. We encourage all of you to try it out today. We showed you how easy it is to get started for free, how easy it is to go to the Microsoft Admin Center and turn this on, how easy and effective it is to have your governance, security, and compliance in place as your employees start using this. and how easy it is to expand as well, to start off with Copilot Chat, but then get custom agents, create agents for specific workflows, enhance those agents to do more, and then proliferate the usage of AI to create that immense impact and adoption and efficiencies in your frontline workforce. If you have any kind of feedback for us, please scan the QR code that you see on the screen here, or you can also click on the two links that you see. I take it /customer hub survey and select Frontline Fridays as the series there to give us feedback so that we can come in even stronger for season 2 for Frontline Fridays.
Thank
If
you
there's
so
nothing
much.
else, thank you so much for your time and attention today, and we hope to chat with you soon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.